Rec-
Hello, hello. All right.
Good evening, all.
Good morning. Dink, 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 dink.
So while we're waiting to get started, how many of you have been to Tokyo or Japan in general? I'm curious, like what was your impressions like from the first time?
Does the airport count?
Not sure if the airport counts. I don't think so.
I
Great.
I went in 2003 as part of I spent a bunch of weeks traveling around Southeast Asia, and I ended up in Tokyo. And I was in like uh, in like Hong Kong and Indonesia and Thailand. And when I went to Tokyo, I felt like it was literally the most foreign place that I had been to. And the observation that I had made was that everywhere else I went in Asia, English was common. Like you could just communicate in English. And in Tokyo, they just assume you speak Japanese. They don't. The English isn't like wasn't as big of a thing. This is 2003, around the same time that Lost in Translation came out. And when I watched that film coming back from Japan, it like that film resonated with me. But yeah, even being at the airport, um, the subway map that I was looking at referring to was all in Japanese. I was looking at like trying to figure out like, okay, here's the tree symbol next to the box with the circle next to it. I was trying to figure out where I was going. But yeah, my impression was that it felt very the most foreign place I'd ever been to, because the language, they just assume that you speak Japanese. But aside from, and that was great. It was fun. It was so much fun living in that world. But I loved Japan. I just like the people are great. Everyone just goes out of their way to help you out. You ask for directions, and they literally will go out of their way to walk you all the way to where you ask them directions to. So that's my impression.
Hey Andrew, are you ready?
Yeah, totally.
All right. You should have the controller to the slide projector.
We're gonna pop.
I mean, if you're sharing, I assumed you're sharing. It might be over.
Okay. Hello.
Gotcha.
Okay. Cool. Hey guys, Andrew Korf. Been kind of part of this group on and off for a few years. Really enjoyed all the great discussions. Um, I do something that kind of sits at the intersection of like enterprise software design and management consulting here in San Francisco, mainly with biotechs these days, which is weird. But I have one really interesting client that's not a biotech. And what I was going to present today was some kind of a side project that I've been tinkering away with um, for a long time. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But I thought this group would be the perfect group to like run this idea by. And then if anybody's got some like, Andrew, stop doing that, do this other thing, anything like that, I'd love to get your feedback today. But I'm just going to walk you through a few slides, try to keep it short and sweet. What's our time? Are we agreed at 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Julian, or?
tight 10, and then
Okay.
the light comes on in the back of the theater, and then we get conversation going.
Yeah, I don't need 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and go. Let's present. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So what is this thing? It's an idea called require.info, or it could be required read. Love to get your read on it. But the idea is a very kind of simple, specific horizon scanning surface. It's something that I want in my pocket. And so what's the background? The background for me goes all the way back to Idoru. I don't know if anybody's read Idoru, but it was kind of a seminal book for me, I don't know, 20 plus years ago. Um, in Idoru, William Goodson introduces this character called Colin Laney, who possesses a unique ability to see nodal points, a metaphor for finding meaning in an overwhelming digital landscape. Sound familiar? This is a reoccurring theme in Gibson's work. I'm a huge Gibson fan. This Laney character has this unique ability, which is a result of experimental drugs that blurs the line between human intuition and machine-like processing. His role foreshadows the novel's exploration of artificial intelligence, raising questions about what it means to be a human in a world where technology augments or replaces natural abilities. I mean, for me, like 20 years ago, I was like, this is crazy, but I love it. It was formative. I do like literally part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. Laney's focus on data analysis rather than hacking or physical action sets him apart, reflecting the evolution of Gibson's cyberpunk themes towards information processing. So this whole idea was that this Laney character could look at data in a three-dimensional landscape, and then he could like get meaning from seeing like this almost topographical display of data. And he had this he could answer almost any question. Blew my mind when I read it. Carrying on away from science fiction, Donald Rumsfeld, Unknown Unknowns. We are also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know that we don't know. Love that quote. I don't like Donald Rumsfeld, but I always love this quote and his way of thinking about unknown unknowns. What's going on out there in the world that I should know about that I don't, right? And so that idea has always fascinated me as well. Fast forward to just before COVID, there's this platform called Blue Dot. They're in biotech. What do? They scan like social media, many other data sources. They're up in Toronto, and they detected COVID like way before the WHO and the CDC, right? So they had actually identified this unusual phenomena that was COVID in Wuhan, China, and started alerting their clients around the world saying, hey guys, like something bad's going on over there. And they've developed this platform that is a similar platform. It's a system and a service to spread knowledge faster than diseases spread themselves. So they're really focused on disease prevention and so on, leveraging AI to provide early warning.
I think I lost your audio.
Yeah, I think Andrew, we lost your audio.
Your audio did change partway through. So I think you have a couple mics there and you switched one and maybe switch back.
Is this better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's the first sound.
That's the fucking iPhone like grabs your microphone. There must be some setting to turn that off and say, iPhone, do not steal my microphone. But anyway,
There's
okay.
no set. There's no setting.
It's listening. So
Go
let's
on.
go back to Blue Dot, right? So Blue Dot has this mission to spread knowledge faster than diseases spread themselves. Love that idea, right? High Flyer. So along comes this company, High Flyer, that you may have heard of, or maybe not, but I'm sure you've heard of DeepSeek. They built a $13 billion portfolio by employing AI models to inform its investment decisions. So basically, they're just doing horizon scanning, and they built these LLMs that sat there and ran like crazy, and they're basically reading everything possible on the internet before the market, and then front running the market, right? And that's how they built this $14 billion hedge fund was horizon scanning, analysis, LLMs, getting their agents, their analysts, this information a little ahead of the market, and then front running the market to make all this money, right? So Highflyer used AI and LLMs to develop strategic foresight by leveraging advanced machine learning and deep learning algorithms to analyze vast data sets, predict market trends, and execute trades with precision. And then they released DeepSeek. They're like, oh, here's our product that we've been using for 5 years to make all these billions of dollars. Interesting, right? So what's the problem? How do we leverage cloud data inside and outside corporate firewalls, online conversations, disparate channels, particularly weird ones like the dark web, Signal, Reddit, others, to stay informed about unique alerts, threats, and opportunities, new information and topics that matter in today's increasingly chaotic world? How do we set up a system that basically is giving me tingle, Andrew, about the stuff that I care about? And so I don't have to get up and read Twitter, to read the New York Times, God forbid, listen to NPR, which is even worse. Like, how do I actually get the intelligence that I want to go out in the world today and make decisions, right? So the idea is horizon scanning, giving early warning, providing insights, and then perhaps developing contingency measures if it's a threat, right? But perhaps it's an opportunity. So a little context, I've been working on developing the single pane of glass approach to horizon scanning and alerts that's been on and off my radar for the last couple of years. I'm working with an organization called Amgen down in Thousand Oaks. I did a ton of work of trying to help them develop these like single pane of glass dashboards that would help them, their senior leaders, people being paid $20 million a year, something they get up in the morning and understand what the hell's going on in the world, especially during COVID, um, and within the organization to make decisions, right? And like one use case that we came up with was dry ice shortage. Like all of a sudden there was this huge shortage around dry ice. They're like, what do we do? And so they wanted a single pane of glass that they could go ask the question, what's going on in the world and within our organization around dry ice so I can make some decisions today. Very basic, very straightforward. So we ended up like prototyping this thing. It took off. They loved it. It's become this whole other thing there now, but it was cool, right? And so, the idea is we kind of use this science fiction approach of looking at, hey, what are these single pane of glass dashboards? We did some comic sketches, like what might this be? How would it work? Then we did some prototyping. It kind of blew their minds. Like they still want it, but they never really got this thing that was the horizon scanning app. They have something different now that's pretty cool, but whatever. So what's the hypothesis? My hypothesis is that perhaps me could develop a horizon scanning application that looks over the curve of the Earth, a platform of services, an interesting space to explore, prototype, validate, and deliver to anybody who's interested in the future, right? Let's make it. Let's get out there in the world. I have a few different people that work in investment and options trading. They're like, dude, as soon as I get that damn thing, give it to me. My people in biotech are like, we need this tomorrow, like figure it out. So what are we prototyping? So I'm working on using vibe coding tools and just kind of like digging into like, all right, we've got all these tools now that are changing daily. We should be able to build, I should be able to build something like this, right? Like, so that's what I'm working on. Prototyping a platform and service that provides users the ability to scan and trap topics that matter to them, provide both cloud-generated and human-augmented topic synthesis. The human part's really important, and analysis that deliver them at a cadence and in the format of their choosing, of your choosing. Daily or hourly or continuous briefing on the topics that matter to you or should matter to you, right? Known unknowns, the stuff that I care about, and unknown unknowns, like who even knew right up the street in Bernal Heights here that something's going down that I should really be paying attention to. I would like to actually have that information come to me as opposed to me needing to like read Nextdoor every day, right? And so like what we're working on and thinking about is that like this is doable. There are systems like this that exist. I'm going to build my own little version of it, right? So you can see this kind of prototype that I'm working on designing out and building. This is newsfeed-ish. I was actually working with Grok the other day and prototyping with Grok while I was driving around. And it was able to really give me everything in an auditory version. My news briefing just came to me as an audio file, right? It was pretty damn cool. And then I could ask it questions. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Tell me more about next gen data architecture, or tell me more about AI powered crypto markets or whatever, you know? And it would tell me. And I was like, well, this is fucking great. I got something that will give me these kind of briefings about the topics I care about, and then I can probe deeper and deeper into it. So yeah, this is I'm building this kind of MVP version. You know, it's very newsfeedish. My hope is to actually have it done, something that I can share with this group. Hopefully by the end of the month. Who knows? It'll probably be 2 months, but it's in the works. It's coming. And what are my next steps? Complete the prototype, validate the solution and service, get it out in front of some people, and say, hey, does this provide you any value to you? Is this helpful? Is this what you would want? And then I think most importantly,
Can I stop you there?
yeah, sure.
I think for this audience, the next step things would be kind of hygiene. So, but I
Okay.
think probably there seems to be a lot of interest in the conversation, and then we're doing another presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. Any thoughts or reflections?
It reminds me
Yeah.
greatly
Oh.
of my old friend's work. He called it frontiers of perception, and he was always looking at the horizon and saying, you know, people don't see things more than a few in this horizon, and I like, you know, it resonates well with his, you know, how do you detect what's new, basically? How do you detect what's new and salient?
Yeah, that's exactly the point, right? Can you build something that's a sensing application that would help you stay on top of what you care about, but also things you don't know that you should care about. And for me, I think that's really interesting.
Bateson defines information as a difference that makes a difference. So, you know, that, I don't know if that helps. Very interesting. I text.
I'm going to go back to 2008, where we sold a company that actually did this using the Twitter fire hose. So less sophisticated than what's available now. But what we did is, with all the Twitter stuff was pre-index on the web, and we had a news startup, and we were able to, by looking at differences in frequency of certain key terms, have our journalists ahead of the game by even 10 minutes, which allowed them to publish a story, even the framework of a story, so that it would be indexed first.
Exactly.
And that, yeah, so I mean, this is what we have available to us now, just in terms of the amount of data, but conceptually, it's really similar.
I saw a Twitter thing once that was like sliding headlines that were frequency sorted. Is that your work? It was a Disney running on a huge screen in the lobby, and it was pretty much like, it was a mind blow because it was such an interesting scrolling nonlinear interface and layered info like that.
Yeah, that specific version of it wasn't us. I don't know when you saw that. We sold out in 2009. It was a little bit more news feedy what we were doing, but it was also graphs. And it was bubbles. So there were topics that would bubble up mostly around people because they were easy to parse. But you could tell if somebody was making the news more than they should be. And that gave a hint as to what was going on. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting, especially with the tools and the amount of data we have available now.
Yeah, and maybe just for this group, if you have any suggestions for like what would be references for this real single pane of glass that you could ask questions to or click and dive deeper into, or maybe it's just there is no glass, it's only an API and it's only voice. Anybody that's got some ideas for Andrew, like, hey, you know how you should think about this differently? Love to hear your challenges, suggestions, ways, things to explore or look at. That would be super cool.
Do you bond the glass to the person somehow so it's salient to them? Like, how does it know who's looking at it? You know?
Great
Yes.
question.
To that question, way back in the day, I used to use this feed that would allow me to have a backside of my lectures. Whenever I had a huge class, I could set the distance of keywords to my IP address so I could get information within the room. So I'd set it to like 1/2 mile because students were still trying to get to the classroom. And then I could set it up to 5, 25.
Amazing.
With the key, I can't remember the name of this app. It was so cool because you could then have the feed rolling of what people were saying around the keyword. If there was something, I'm looking at Sean Park's conversation in the chat about adding in some intentional noise and randomness that maybe delimiting it by where you are specifically would change how and what it's sent to you. It would change the conversation so that it's contextualized a bit.
That fits with
I love that
stochastic
suggestion.
noising private data for privacy too.
So a couple,
sorry, go ahead.
a couple things that make me think of it is my experience in building signal models for folks is the front end to determine what's important for them to look at is the hardest part and the like a key part that they struggle with. And so I'm curious like how you make that easier, allow them to understand what's going to resonate because they're the frenetic, I want to know everything sort of folks still can make money off of that. The ability to like, what are you trying to drive? Are you trying to drive some like provocation or that weirdness factor in some sort of way? And what makes me wonder in terms of like the dialing up the weirdness factor is we were playing with a concept around what does it look like to create agents around workflow or like a digital advisory board that rounds out your biases in some sort of way. And so we were playing with training it based off of the strategies that exist so that the organizations need to be comfortable with maybe training this based off of where they have assumed they're going and the strategies so that it can know where your edges are and where you need like the polite contrarian or the extreme contrarian in some of those things. And so I would be curious how you create that window, but like they've helped design that window in some sort of way. Cause I would love to have more faith in folks that they can ask the right questions, but they can't time and time again. And so like that interface at the front end of what that window is, what I'm particularly think would be the biggest differentiator versus the back end.
I love it. That's super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So the two sort of things there that I think relate to each other is like, what do people do? Like literally, what is the thing that people do in order to engage with this? So, one of the challenges with people is that they are process driven. They have to do stuff in order to value stuff. And so you need to think about like, what are the set of actions that give significance and meaning to things, if you're talking about executives, they have like a lot of people giving them reports, but the significance of those reports are determined and constrained by the nature of their relationships with the people that are implicit with those reports. And then second, like what's important depends highly on the kinds of conversations you have, and that is really that can be really sensitive information in terms of and it's actually at its best when it is sensitive information about what a person is like in order to be able to understand those things. So you kind of like training across the entire corpus of the internet is one thing, but training with you and what is interesting to you is important. But then it's also really compromising. So one of the things that I talk about with people in the context of Siri and like what should Siri do with Safari versus Mail? And I actually think it shouldn't. I think Siri is something that is best, or these kinds of capabilities are best when they reach across as many different things, but are sort of positioned in such ways that makes it trustworthy. So I think the idea of a sort of a neutral pane of glass that simply presents information is interesting, but it's illusory in that until it has significance, and then it needs to earn it, and that earning of significance comes from getting a lot of information about the person who's actually looking at it, and then it becomes, you know, important to understand the nature of the relationship between those two things.
Yeah, that seems like where the intrinsic value was. And the platform that I said that I built with Amgen, we had basically the scraping service, the aggregation service, the curation service, but ultimately it went to an administrative assistant who was the final gatekeeper, or a senior analyst that would look and review every single recommendation and add their little bit of a human touch to it, or insight, that was like the key to it ultimately being valuable. Like it went machine, analyst, senior analyst, or AE, then to the eyeballs that mattered. And that's when it really started working. I'm interested in trying to do something like that here.
Go ahead.
I have a thought kind of springing off of Camille's comment about how much user control there might be in this pane of glass, and what level of focus might there be. So I just imagine being able to click different levels of like steep or pestle or steep V or whichever. Like you can focus on technology or environmental or economics. You could also have a maybe a slider of sentiment analysis. Are you looking for stuff that feels more positive, that feels neutral, that feels negative? So this type of like control to better dial in more specifically what you're looking for, at the risk of being inundated with kind of a general swath of information, but your filtered preferences can now inform what you don't know that you don't know, because it knows what your biases are that you're dialing in. So it could find a way to present counterpoints or hidden signals that you may not have considered. So just
a bunch of warmth settings for like debate or sympathy, or like just different kinds of generative warmth would be cool. This is making me go back to my street theater days, when we were articulating a thesis of what we called micromedia instead of mass media. If you think of mass media, you're making a piece of our media with a bunch of people, but that bunch of people is smaller than the group that's going to consume it, right? So you've got some experts that are condensing a signal and then handing it off. And that's sort of like McLuhan-esque mass media, right? Hopefully we've got good experts delivering the signals and we're choosing good signals to read. But micromedia, we were interested in creating theater events on the street for people where we had more actors than audience. And that led us also to literary analogs. And then you realize, like, the modern political situation is precisely because Amgen, like institutions, are filtering lots of information upwards in the private silo, and then it gets to the top where a decision can be made. That's a micromedia stack that's organizing secret information intelligence for actionable choices by the company in the field. And so it's a sort of information armor in a sense, and you end up isolating and creating information bubbles, and we can see the extraordinary political ramifications of that today. So like the tension between micromedia and mass media has always been interesting to me. And what you're talking about now is giving that capability to democratizing it, essentially, if you can specify your particular secret silo.
I wonder how much of this could be one of that phenomenon where you where it's not actually, it's finding things that resonate with you because it thinks it's doing what you want it to do. And if you're sufficiently, attuned to that, like it shapes your understanding of the world to the degree that you actually shape the world. So I think someone mentioned like a kind of Borgesian kind of phenomenon. I mean, in the market sense, I guess that's because that can happen, right? I mean, you get the pump and dump guys. I mean, they sort of shape the market, for extractive reasons, or if you, I don't know, there's got to be a name for the phenomenon, but it's like when I got into like model rockets when I was a kid, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like everyone is now into model rockets. Like, did I cause that? And my dad was like, no, that, they've been around for like a long, go back to the Chinese, kind of thing. You're like, oh, okay, well, fair enough. But so, you're shown things and then you sort of ponder them. And in the context of like futures work, I guess, it's all speculative to begin with. And if you have a sufficiently kind of charismatic demeanor, or people are like, oh, I wonder what Korf thinks. And you're like, well, this is what I've been tracking. And they're like, huh, yeah, 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 okay, okay. And it becomes this, I don't know, not self-fulfilling prophecy in a bad way, but just weirdly generative.
Yeah, it's a problem there. I mean, one thing I use is lists, right? I use lists on X to help me filter into topics that I care about. It's kind of clunky and complicated. Um, I personally want a better tool than just having to make a list and then go look at that list to see what people are talking about around that topic area. Let's just say, crop moisture in Iowa. A bunch of farmers in Iowa. So I care about crop moisture in Iowa for whatever reason. And I have to go read all their posts about, their Ford truck and their new red hat or whatever to actually get any signal around crop moisture, and like, so for me, like somehow a better system that helps me to like focus in on the stuff that I really care about is kind of what I've been trying to build here. So
Yeah, Mateus.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry,
I'm
Mateus.
thinking. I'm thinking. Because you have so many use cases, right? So if you do like people who do like Julian says, like pump and dump people who really need to be fast, act fast on the market, or if you don't want to read the New York Times, or you want to look at rain patterns in Iowa, right? There's garbage in, garbage out information wise. So the more slick you make this, the more convincing and convincing the system will be, and the more lazy people will be using it. So one feature I would think might be useful would be, what are we not tracking? Not even like the unknown unknowns, but what are my sources going in here? I know we had a meeting like 2 years ago, something like that, about the
Yeah.
recorded future here in Sweden. They do the dark web threat vectors things for companies, really expensive, one panel threat analysis for companies and states. But they are extremely diligent in their sourcing and what threats they're analyzing, so that people can know, okay, this actually only looks at chatter in the 100 top hacker and 0-day forums, or like secret Telegram channels, whatever, right? So you know where your data is coming from, implicitly or explicitly also know what you're not covering. If I was looking to substitute my daily, like 10 newspapers that I look at with this, for my personal use in my daily life, it would be easy just to go through, it's slick, I can talk to it, I can ask it question, but I'd forget that I'm not looking at the other 200 papers that are not being sourced, or that are much lower in the noise, right? So to have that in consideration, I guess, because making it too slick, too convincing, then we end up with the people who take, what LLMs are saying for granted, which is all over the place, and this would exacerbate that function or feature or phenomena, right?
I'm really into terminal user interfaces. Maybe it should be a little bit hard to use.
Totally, yeah.
As a kind of thing. Cool. Thanks, Corp. I would suggest to you to, if you are, I mean, you get you understand the community here. Just post up in like now hear this or something like that. Just how people can get in touch with you if they want to
Okay.
try it out with all the usual caveats of like, it's kind of broken and sort of, there's no expectation. I think,
Yeah.
I just want to let people know that this is like, this is the carnival approach to exploring new futures. Just see what happens, and maybe you get
100%.
stuck at the top of the roller coaster ride.
Yeah. for me, it's just a path I'm interested in going down that I have been for a long time. So here you guys are in one little blaze mark in the trail. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank
I
you.
got one other thing to say, which is like, how do you distinguish between
Briefly, 'cause
volcanoes? Like
we got
post
Kirby here.
2007, we had like pre 2007, the internet was flat, and everybody's little server was, you know, a web page on the internet. And then Facebook and Google search and everything made these volcanoes. And so do you go to the volcanoes for the info that you're filtering out and then deliver that? I mean, or is there some better way that restructures the whole topology of the internet in a sense, informationally? Because, you know, everybody here has talked about how salience is sort of local in some fashion. And so we're talking about reorganizing locality. That's what I want to end with.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Thanks, Random.
Yeah. Whatever.
We got Kirby Ferguson up next. Kirby, thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Sorry, it helps if I'm unmuted. Thanks for having me, Julian.
Yeah, of course.
Morning, everybody. Should I just launch in?
Yeah, just get into it.
Great. I have no slides or anything. I'm just going to talk it through. So I'm here to talk about side projects, I guess, and the glory of side projects. I've had a really positive experience with a side project and a collaboration, not just a side project, but a collaboration. So collaborating with a longtime friend named Karin Fuyrhie. She is from the world of branding and design. I'm from the world of filmmaking and education and speaking. I'm best known for a video series called Everything is a Remix, which went viral in like 2012 or so, and has continued on, has managed to morph and evolve since then, sporadically. So kind of a video guy meeting a designer, and we just always got along great. We worked together on one project a long time ago. It went really well, and we always just had like had a connection, but also are very different sorts of people. She's much more of a person who's into aesthetics. I love aesthetics, but it's not necessarily something that like I really prioritize. I'm more about just the content and expressing the thing. So we paired up and we started talking through creating something, and it evolved over time to be something totally different. What we initially talked about was doing something that was light to make, energizing, fun. It still is those things, but it didn't become light. So we were thinking like a live stream thing, something conversational and fast and relatively easy to make. And then just over time, it took a bunch of detours and went a totally different direction, ended up being very short, fairly produced videos about AI. We were both interested in generative AI. I was more playing with it, certainly using LLMs, but in terms of the video and image stuff, was just playing because I didn't find those tools especially useful. She was having image generation was working better for her art. She's also an artist, and she developed a lot of characters, and she experimented with mapping those characters via runway, their faces onto video footage, and it produced a cool effect. And she showed me that, and that stuck in my mind. And then I thought, okay, like, can we make that the video format? So we recorded a bunch of conversations, like too many conversations, hours of stuff, trying to figure out the tone of it and everything. It took a long time. There was a lot of pre-production, a lot of getting together and chatting and thinking things through before we finally actually like successfully made a video, a 3-minute video. And they're compressed videos that have kind of a personal take, ambiguous take on working with artificial intelligence. We didn't want to be like a doomer because we're both using AI and liking it and benefiting a lot from it in a variety of ways. But at the same time, we get like the criticisms and we get the low quality effect that it has a lot of times. Like it's really poor at a lot of things. So we want to do something where it's we've considered sort of a next step conversation about AI, where it's not just this stuff sucks, let's get rid of it. And it's not, oh, like AGI, like hooray, like let's become irrelevant, let's become bugs. It was something in between and hopefully more nuanced. So we've made 4 videos in this series thus far. It will be on whatever schedule it will be on, and it will go on as long as it will go on. But I could show a video next if that works, Julian, or I could send you a link if you wanna show it.
So I put the link to the, I guess it was the first episode that you guys did. It's like
Right.
3-minute 40 video.
Yep.
I think it's great. I mean, it's
Thanks,
just a
man.
wonderful kind of, it's like listening to
Thanks, Nina.
the Desert Oracle, but, you know, just kind of reflections, and it is like a dream state kind of thing. So you can either share it. I don't know what works best on Zoom, but I think it would be nice to listen to it or watch it and hear it in a room with, you know, here.
Yeah. Should I play it? Can I share the screen, or do you want to share a screen?
Yeah, you go ahead from your side. Let's see what happens.
All right, so share sound, optimize for video sharing.
Sounds like you know what you're doing.
Not especially, but you got me?
Yep, got it.
All right, great. I'll let it rip and hopefully this works.
My interest in AI was definitely born from fear and anxiety. 1000%. And now it's a place of kind of like weird, mystical pleasure, which is quite an about face. That doesn't mean it's solely that. I find it, frankly, embarrassing to admit that I use these tools. I can't quite tell if I can claim the work as my own or ethically endorse it. Nevertheless, I have found creative liberties in using them in a way that I haven't had in maybe decades. And it does feel new and alien, and I'm excited by the things that I'm producing with it. And it's opened up new things for me psychologically and in my artistic practice. It's like kind of uncomfortable to admit. I think that the creative industry, and I'm deeper in brand and design, has had a lot of kind of fear about what AI means for them, but generally, I think much of that fear has subsided as people have gotten more familiar over the last year, and now there's just a general skepticism. The aesthetics are not very good. There's nothing to be particularly inspired about. You know, there's a lot of ethical quandaries related to how these models were trained. People are like, can I even use this? Like, if I make stuff in this, can I pass it on to my clients? Like, legally, I'm confused what I can do with this. There's a lot of skepticism about whether it's able to create anything of kind of like aesthetic beauty interest. We've certainly seen weird things coming out. We've seen grotesques, which is somewhat interesting in its own way. There's this veneer of AI, or as one creative director put it, I loved it, he said, there's the whiff of AI, which to me implies a certain kind of aesthetic stench. I'd say the perception generally is like, don't bother with these tools because you're not gonna get anything good out of it. They don't produce great things. You can't control them all that well. And there's this kind of like almost overriding function that comes through in the visual quality. It feels like a comic book. It feels like Disney-fied. It feels very twee to me. It feels like a teenage boy's portfolio site. I personally don't relate to it. Oftentimes when I even try to build a character, it takes a lot of effort just to get it to reflect something that I can relate to. It feels quite immature. You know, there does seem like a risk where art will be entirely at the hands of engineers. Like, artists need to be in this equation. I mean, I think we all hope that any new tool, particularly a powerful one, can be used for good. Now, how we define good, I think, is a huge question. There's lots of conversation that we've entered this period where everything is the same. There's a homogenization of just cultural, artistic, visual trends, you know, whether that's in branding and logos, whether it's in design, whether it's in fashion. It feels like we're at a bit of a dead end with also too much to sift through. So my hope is that, you know, how can a new tool, a new medium, whatever we want to call it, potentially provide a little interesting doorway in that darkness into something new.
All right. There we are. That was episode 1 of thank you, Philip, and thank you, Nina. That was episode 1 of what we ultimately call Dream Logic. Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, so that was what we came up with. We've done 4 of those. The 4th one just came out, and it was very gratifying and thrilling to see that it connected with people and it resonated with people. So it definitely, and like that's always the thing with side projects, like you're just doing it because
My interest in AI
you want to do it. Oops. Oh, that's not me, is it? Sorry,
No, you're good.
I just heard Karin again. You never know what's going to happen with a side project, right? Because you're not, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen with any sort of project, but it connected with people, and it was really interesting to see the way that it connected. Like it was the personal aspect of it, that it was like an AI avatar talking to you, but it's very clearly a person, and it's a personal and kind of vulnerable voice that you're hearing that really connected with people. And that was an angle that it happened to emerge for that one, but it wasn't necessarily what we planned to do. And then we decided that that's sort of part of the character of the show, and we've been doing that since. That was Karin Fuyrhie. That was my partner Karin in that first video, and then I'm in a couple. Karin's in another one, and then we're talking to a variety of people in AI and art and design, and we'll be releasing those over the coming months, and who knows, we'll see. We've gotten into a groove with it too, which is really great. They are fairly time consuming to make. They're not super easy, which is what we originally planned. So it didn't work out that way, but you know, it's lighter. It has become lighter just through figuring out what the format is. It doesn't quite take as much intellectual labor. So that is my side project. That is Dream Logic.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure there are lots of questions or kind of reflections.
Well, you've set the bar high, so I hope so.
I just have a short reflection. I love the contrast between what the character is talking about in the short about attribution, ethical sourcing, and so on, and the end titles, which says music, font. Those are credited,
yes.
but you can't actually credit whatever has been used to teach the models. I like that contrast.
Yeah, you can't. Unfortunately, I'm hoping somebody can crack that nut. Maybe it would be great if we could know what is in the stew that came up with these images, but yeah, we don't right now.
It's good. It's interesting to hear, you know, you're saying that it was harder than you had hoped to build, like the first couple, and then they're getting easier.
Yeah.
So you obviously, you know, really know your stuff from the before times, right? In terms of having been able to produce media, you know, like this, or enough like this to be able to kind of make the transition into it. From your appreciation of the tools on this side of episode 4, or whatever you said you're up to, do you think people without that experience would be able to make something like this? Like, could somebody learn to do this with just the stuff that you used to build it?
No.
Or is there kind of a ladder being kicked out by the sort of techniques that you and your partner have learned in the past that you're able to put to use that won't be available to a generation of folks who are exclusively using tools more like this?
I mean, it's certainly not available to you. It's certainly not unavailable to you. You can get it, you can learn it. So I think like most of it, I don't really consider it to be an AI piece of media. The only AI actually in it is the avatar and how it is animated. But it's all like the sound mix is completely me. The edit is completely me. The music is by Karin's husband, Neil. So it's just a ton of labor being done by people, and that's all. Like the editing is with DaVinci Resolve, the music is I don't know what Neil used to make it, but there's a bunch of old media stuff that is going on there, and if you don't have those skills, then you can't make something that is like that. I mean, something I'd be curious like what the room thinks about this, if anybody's delved into this realm, but making the shit work is like really not straightforward, right? Like making AI images do anything other than just some gimmicky. They're good for comedy. Like I started out in comedy, and if I was doing comedy now, I'd be cranking out the comedy with because like the goofiness of it is part of its charm, right? That can be part of its charm with comedy. But in terms of using it for anything else, like it's not straightforward at all what to do with them. And video is it's like I played with VO3 and it's amazing. Like it's absolutely incredible, but it's also so bad. It's also so awful, right? Like it's
Can you characterize, be more precise about what the awful is from
the
your
awfulness. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, like it's stupid. It's so stupid. It's incredibly stupid. Like it's really good at doing like if you want to like a face and a person like doing a selfie or you want like a vlogger type effect, like it can do that stuff very well. It's still lacking in like nuance, and you can't watch it for very long without realizing like, okay, there's this sort of like spectrum of emotion that's being expressed here, and it gets monotonous after a bit, right? So there's that, but bigger than that, like you can give it an image. I guess like it's poor at image to video for one thing. So I gave it an image of a conductor the other day. I wanted the conductor to tap the music stand and raise his arms like conductors do. And instead of animating the conductor who was in the image that I gave it, it panned back or dollied back and then put a second conductor in the foreground that we like dollied past. So now there's two of them. There's this other guy who's now in the shot. And there's just a myriad of like weird broken shit. I mean, everybody, if you use it at all, it's just there's tons of broken stuff and gibberish. And VO is relatively coherent compared to like Runway, for instance, which we use to do the mapping of the avatar, and it works great for that. And it's again, it's super impressive, but it's way more screwed up in terms of what it will give you. So video generators are among the glitchiest software I've ever used that you actually like pay for. So like using AI video is super. Sorry, I'm going a long time, but I'd be curious like what folks think of that. Like what do you do with this shit?
I just set up the new I can't the naming conventions for these things are baroque, but it's
Yes.
like basically like the newest open source model. Everyone's crowing about it, and I got one guy, he's a great guy who you kind of follow, very very generous, exceptional, and he's like, here's the workflow, here's how to download the model, here's where to put it. It's for comfy UI.
Yeah.
And it's like you're saying, it's kind of like you get 5 seconds of video, fairly high resolution, and you're like, what is going on here? And sometimes it's like okay, but sometimes you're kind of like, wait, I was doing a bunch of car stuff, vehicles, weird sci-fi vehicles, and it's like the wheels are turning, but it's not moving forward.
Yes.
And part of it is, I think, what I enjoy about the meditation from the video with Karin is like
Yep.
is like that you have to find some beauty in that, because as Neil Stevenson wrote recently on his Substack, it's like, imagine this is a different species that just doesn't, like a dog or a pet or a parrot. You're like, stop saying that, and the parrot's like, is doing its thing. You don't expect, dominion over this intelligence. And when you do that, I think, maybe it's on the side of comedy at this point. Like one of the, I think it was, what is the new one? You just mentioned VO. Is it VO?
VO version 3. Yeah.
I haven't tried it, but you see what people are doing, and you look in the videos like, oh my God, that looks like Jimmy Kimmel's stage set. Wait a minute, she's got 3 legs.
Yes.
And that's what they put up. That's what
Yeah.
they put up.
Even the very best stuff, like if you really focus on it, it will look good when you first watch it. But if you really focus on it, you'll see that like legs are blurring together and fingers are disappearing, and there's all sorts of weird stuff that's going on.
Coming out of low resolution, high speed, real time graphics,
Yeah.
I had to learn to love the pixel, which meant that, as a saying, it's like, don't fight the grid, just adopt the grid. And going to lower resolution, loving the pixel, letting its vibration inform the image instead of fighting to hide it. In the same way, like in my AI music, if I have a rockabilly song where, you know, it's a great song, it sounds like a genuine rockabilly song, but in one of the generations, he just doesn't sing English. He sings some weird ass la la rockabilly fa goulash. It's impossible to articulate in human words what he put out. And I love this effect. This is like loving the pixel. That there's 3 legs on the thing is amazing. These hallucinations are insane. And so I sort of, at this transitory brink of this first light of the tool, I think we should be loving that element because it cues the person that they're listening to an AI product. That's okay. It's like stop trying to make it look like everything that came before and embrace the novelty. And that gives me an ability to sift through the hallucinatory insight that comes from it, instead of just throwing it away because it's got, you know, an extra finger. So
yeah, it will become an aesthetic, right? And we'll probably be nostalgic about the like 2022
I am definitely
glitchcore look or whatever it was.
3.
Yeah.
You know, it's some...
I mean,
but the funny thing is,
sorry, just to add to the aesthetic thing, is James Bridle's new aesthetic, which was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, when he wrote I think it was maybe as a presentation at South by or something like that, and it was called The New Aesthetic, and he was, it might even be in his book, a book or two ago, but he was sort of taking a kind of artist theorist look at what the aesthetic of the network, this was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. You could almost do the same thing, like the new aesthetic, which is, I guess it might be interesting, it might not be interesting. I think if someone was a kind of art critic, they'd be like, ooh, I could really get into that and write a long article for Artforum or something. But what is it and why, and how do we make sense of it? And I think you integrate sort of, some of Random / Phillips reflections on it, what Mateos was wondering about, in order to sort of characterize what's going on. And I think you also have to insert into that essay or whatever, that the thought on this new aesthetic, why is it, what's going on when it aggravates people? It's the same aggravation that people had, I imagine, in the cinematic version of Bob Dylan playing at the Newport Jazz Festival, where people want to riot, or Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, where people are just so agitated by this new experimental form that they lose their mind and go kinetic, literally start punching each other. It's like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? And I think we're all feeling this. I mean, I'd be curious to hear some of your, for those of us, I'm not saying that we're special or anything, but decided to go push at the vanguard and just fuck around with these things, not for the purposes of like, of being aggravating, or something, but for the purposes of like experimentation and exploration. We're like, inside, I can, I know you, well enough, and have come to know Karin a little bit more about how I can't help but do this. And forgive me, sorry that I have to do this.
Yes.
And if this makes you angry, that is not my intention. But I want to also ask people, like, why the fuck is it making you angry?
Oh, I mean,
I'd
love to hear
the energy use, or like, it's totally stupid. Learn to draw with a real pencil. And it's like, well, what happened when the pencil was first introduced?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear what the room has to say, but sorry, you want to say something?
People attacked me for my watch.
Why?
Because it has no face in it. I've had people get mad at me when they asked me the time and I showed them my watch, and they're like, what the fuck is that for? It's like,
it's just, you spoiled their expectations. I think expectations are a big part of it.
Entire sense of time right here. Like it absolutely, it's deeper than that. To point out what Julian's saying, it's an affront to how humans should operate. And like the fact that like with AI, you're offboarding creativity roles. They don't understand that you're still selecting like a lot. You're selecting a lot to make that video. You are using all your artistic discretion to put that signal together, and people just can't see past the paint, you know?
I think that's true for people who see a house and think house, see a car and think car. Like they don't understand like what parts something is made of. And so like when the car breaks, they're like, I don't know, send it to the mechanic, fix it, here's the money. Like it's all symbol exchange because like none of it is actually like real matter to them. I think with a lot of this stuff, you know, how people choose to engage with the tools on an individual basis and in different settings sort of just depends on like how much social friction you're willing to encounter. Like I use these tools, but like in a back end sense, because like I'm a photographer and like can make videos and generally speaking, like don't have the need yet to use it. And I'm like not totally sure that my audience can sort of digest the use of these tools. Like the whole like water consumption thing and all of that, I think like, okay, so it costs, you know, a few bottles of water to make this email. Like, wouldn't I sit here drinking a bunch of water myself, sort of like trying to do this more slowly? Like, I think that in some ways, like the math works out, but I think the tools are going to be used no matter what. It's just sort of just like it takes a while for the aesthetic to either get good enough to the point where you can't see it, or to create a sort of safe enough social space where you're not going to get a bunch of pushback for using it. But I think the people who are upset about it are mostly like it's sort of like a bootstraps mentality, like, oh, I have college debt, you should have college debt too. Younger people are going to use these things whether or not older people are upset about them.
Yeah, I see it as part of that, but the uncanny valley as a phrase in robotics, and you know it spreads everywhere else, is not simply to do with the fact that like, well, if I need to learn how to make facial expressions, then you sure as hell better ought to make facial expressions as well. It's more to do with the fact that there's a general compact of sort of coordinated actions and phenomena that come along with the idea of facial expressions. And when a facial expression occurs, it normally means these things as well. And so when you have sort of these nominal production values within a piece of media, then you would expect the other things that go into it, the writing, the casting, the craft services table, to have been at least at that level as well. And when they aren't, that's uncomfortable. And it's not just because somebody was frustrated about how much they had to pay their caterer. It's to do with the fact that there are these whiffs of inconsistency where the idea of the corpus has been trained in different ways. It's like I often think about purple in, you know, in ancient Greek and Roman times, and the fact that like purple was fucking expensive. And everybody who saw it knew that purple was expensive as hell. And you can't really look at that culture and not go like, well, remember, everybody knows purple is just absurdly expensive. And so like things, aesthetic choices mean things, and they mean less now. And when you can just choose an RGB color that is this expensive as hell purple versus kind of bargain basement variants. But like, we still are trying to construct this constellation of meaning around things, and AI really subverts that, for better or worse. And you can play with it at the margins, and you can explore what happens when I don't have to book Will Smith to be able to kind of entertain my maniacal fantasies of spaghetti eating, and that's awesome. But like, what those things mean is we're kind of thrown into a disarray about what it is that this sort of collision or combination of aesthetic choices means. Yeah, like I was doodling with some sort of mid-century military design, just greebling designing stuff, and I was thinking a lot about how watching restoration YouTube, like watching people put together and put back together engines and cars and radios and whatever else, was really informing my decisions about how to put little bits and pieces on it. I work at Apple, and so I also build a lot of Apple hardware just for fun, like in terms of 3D stuff. And one of the things about Apple hardware is that it is aggressively hostile to you having any sense of how it gets put together. They're just these ineffable round rectangles or squircles, and how dare you try to imagine what it took to be able to put it together. And yeah, like the aesthetics choices of these other objects, Apple excluded, like tell you about what they are, tell you about their life cycle, tell you about where they come from and what kind of role they play. And yeah, like I said, like AI subverts that, with Kirby, with your two maestros, your two conductors. Like normally if you had two conductors in the same fucking shot, there would be a very good reason for it. And yet not really, like, and
Yeah.
so we end up in a world that's just absolutely littered with Chekhov's guns, and that's pretty confusing to us.
Yeah.
That's interesting, Brandon, because it says something about the
Sorry, Random. Nina had her
democratization
hand
of
up.
how. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay if he wants to finish that thought.
I'm just seeing how when I ask the AI for a cat, it'll give me a really realistic photographic cat. But if I ask it for a picture of something that's never been seen before, it'll artistically generate it and show it to me in different artistic ways. And some of those are going to be marginal artists or bizarro, trainings. And so it's sort of showing us more of the artistic mind that it was trained on in a way. Because some of those bad answers were just bad artists that it learned from, right? Anyway, there's an interesting way that it's letting us see into ourselves in a way. That's all I want to say. Please go, Nina.
That's fascinating. So as mentioned in the video, we've seen a lot of the same sort of style for anything mentioned around futures, AI, it's very like cold and robotic. And I can tell that all of the videos that the two of you have produced is definitely informed by fine art. That's why it stands out. I'm curious how you landed on that style and aesthetic and kind of what that means broadly.
Thanks. That's Karin. That is her part of the
Amazing.
equation. Yeah. So Karin is a fine artist as well as a branding and design person. So that's totally, it would have a different feel. I can't really answer it. It would have a different feel if it were me. And it's been fun to say something about collaboration. It's been fun to just sort of go, oh, like, okay, like you can you can just have that. Like I like you have thought more deeply about that aspect and you can own it. And unless I really feel like there can be a bit of tension sometimes because I just want to show the thing. Like if I'm talking about slop, this happened in another episode. I just want to show the slop. Like I just want you to see the slop. And she like doesn't really want to show the slop, right? So we did we used it, so I just compromised. I was like, you know what, the world's seen enough slop. I won't contribute more slop. And we showed up, I found a funny clip from a movie called The Stuff from the 80s, if anybody has seen
nice.
there's a deep cut if anybody has seen that one. So we used a clip from that film, but that's Karin. That's Karin giving it that aesthetic.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any, I don't know if we're out of time, but like the topic of like why it pisses people off so much is super interesting to me. If anybody has any thoughts on that or is pissed off by it.
I think it's mostly any new technology experiences this. I don't know if you've ever read like Lewis Mumford. He's written a lot of like histories of technology. He's got a really great book. It's part of a larger series called Technics and Civilization. It's long, but he's a very good writer. He's like early 20th century, was sort of writing like post-Depression era and like throughout World War II. But he was like a, Jewish communist, like smart intellectual person. And he like traces the history of technics to like way back before the Industrial Revolution, like goes back to clocks and all kinds of other stuff, and just like does a pretty good job just like charting how people respond negatively or not to technology, and ultimately lands on this idea that like it's not so much that technics or machines or whatever are like inherently bad, it's that like the way that a culture absorbs them and uses them is often bad. And he was sort of writing this book in advance of World War II, so like he ends on this very optimistic note, and then spends like the next couple decades like seeing that, generally speaking, things can take a turn for the worse. But I think people are frustrated, but there's sort of almost an imperative to use the tools and demonstrate how to use them well. Because if you're just mad about them, then like people who have no qualms about that are going to use them, and they're going to get better at them. So I mean, they're sort of inherently political, but like the sort of like yay or nay on it, I think is sort of a boring question. And it's, the challenge, I think, sort of to my earlier point, is just like figure out how to make sure that you're in a space where like that is not the main thing that you're talking about all the time. And so like if you're going to release stuff publicly, like trying to make sure that you're not doing it with an audience that can't get beyond that question. Because it's just it's a place that like people are just going to get stuck. And I could see somebody just like, spending a lot of social capital on that question when it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Thanks,
given your previous work, Kirby, that AI feels like it's a remix, but it kind of isn't, given that you can't really do revisions. That's what I find they work like very frustrating. You feel this close to something awesome.
Yes.
But every time you try to refine it, you can't refine and review.
Yes.
You're just like kind of stuck in this artificial remix that is intriguing, but it's also it's deeply reflective of your own shortcomings, so to speak. So for me, when I'm stuck in that moment, I'm realizing that I'm often just looking at my own brain refusing to make the leap, and I can't figure out how to change what I'm asking it. And why should I pay a human to do this? Because this is ridiculous.
Totally. I mean, it's funny too, because they say that they can do that, right? Like Sora has a remix feature, Midjourney has a remix feature, but what you get is actually like a recreation, like from the ground up, like another. It's all one-shotting, right? It's all happening in one shot. You don't really get to carry over what you did in the last, like pixel for pixel. Pardon me?
Even when you work with it with like the colors, I've been working like on branding, just something basic.
Oh, it changes the color?
No, it can't deliver the look. It can just deliver the numbers. But when you ask, okay, now create the template, it never shows up. Intriguing. But it can tell you about the template. And so then you just have to trust it and or go do the research yourself to get the colors next to each other and then deal with the whole other AI. There's a way that it feels like I could have hired someone.
Yeah, and like I think that this is why I consider Adobe to be like I don't know if you can consider a giant like Adobe to be a dark horse, but to me that like they can win it because they can give you tools where like it's a graphical tool already, and then we can layer this on top. And like you like the pixels that you got, you can keep those pixels and you can layer on top of it. They've already got that foundation that you can build on top of, and I think that like that's gonna be the way that it works for sure. Was it Nina next?
Yeah,
that's
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yep. Kirby, I'm curious if you storyboard your videos, or if you do any sort of like planning of like what the arc is in the story, or is it mostly just kind of like it comes from the heart and it's more casual?
It is. It's from the heart. The conversations are just conversations. So there's two of us in the actual Zoom calls. It's not just it's not just one of us talking. So we're actually having a conversation, and then we cut that. I cut that down into. I find a theme in it, so it all happens in the edit. But yeah, we don't storyboard. I never know what I'm going to show. We just make it all up as we go, and that's in the interest of keeping it as small as you can, which is always a challenge with these side projects, right? And we do lots of. Her and I are both oriented towards like polish it, like make it better, make it better, make it better, and you gotta be careful with that.
It's funny. Awesome, thanks.
Thanks, Nina. Mateos?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna speak up as a resident curmudgeon.
I love it.
So I'm thinking, following up on what Aaron said, right? That it might be an age thing. I mean, that it doesn't track with how many old people are liking Shrimp Jesus and similar, right? So older people are definitely embracing AI, no questions asked, because I mean, I like the picture. doesn't matter if it's fake or not, whatever, right? It's an aesthetic. It mirrors my emotions. So I don't think that's not a valid criticism of the people who have criticism of this, right? I'm thinking there are like two camps of people who might, from my experience, object to AI more broadly, and you presented in the video as well. So one is the going back to like Walter Benjamin, right? So his work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. So we lack the aura of authenticity, the author, the authorship, and then the human touch in the reproduction. So people object that, okay, this isn't human made, therefore it shouldn't be imbued with human values, whether moral, aesthetic, or whatever. And then there are like the very practical one, which I'm more interested in, I guess, and that's just a complete money grab by the organizations that have created these models, and that still sticks in my throat. I'm not going to let it go, because it's the way the models are trained is a complete atrocity, for both disrespecting what has come before and for generating and helping a new generation of artists to rise up, right? So
yeah,
those are my objections. And but my background is also, I have an MFA, so I have an artistic practice, blah blah blah. Conceptually, I love the idea. I mean, I don't know how many of you are on the Unstable Diffusion Discord, but I mean, I love watching, furry demon blood porn. I mean, people generate crazy stuff, and it's fun, and it's melting faces and all that. It's totally different. It's the whole shrimp Jesus aesthetic, and I like it. That is creating something new. Three-legged people in a TV couch, love it. But you can't ignore that other stuff, and that is still a valid concern, objection, whatever, something that needs to be overcome. And that goes back to politics. So it's not just a question of how do we consider this as an aesthetic movement or a way to create art and meaning and interpret our world. It's the way it has scaled. We've created systems through social media where, in order to reach out, all the artists are funneled through that, and now they are competing against 100 times slop. Conceptually, you can still discuss the merits between someone who makes a watercolor or someone who prompts a watercolor. You can discuss those things, but in practice, it's a political issue where you can't really compete on that platform, and that's where the stuff is happening. So that would be my objection. But conceptually, I mean, I love the weird stuff. It's fun. It's really cool, and it's a joy to play with. But it's extremely problematic. And you bring it up in the first video. I'm going to check the other ones out. So just wanted to add that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Brandel?
Yeah. So Mateos covered some of the sort of aspects of the politics of it that are kind of important. And the fact that it's like a lot of the stuff is harvested and it's made complicated in terms of attributability of it is one thing. Another aspect of it, I don't think that's an intrinsic problem with the idea of generative models as they exist today, as much as it is one that's kind of motivated by the business practices and priorities of the people who did it. I do think that it would be possible to come up with a back propagation of attributability. Maybe people won't do it unless they're forced, and maybe we'll never get a set of agencies and entities that would end up forcing them, but that's sort of separate to it. The other aspect of it that I think sort of relates to, but is slightly different to the politics of who benefits there, is agency and contingency. So if I get to learn how to use a pencil, like it's still highly contingent on the availability of pencils into the future, but that's sort of generally rendered a little bit more ubiquitous than having access to runway ML, right? Like if I learn how to get good with something, I talk to people who build apps, and a lot of the people are actually apprehensive about building knowledge into a technology stack that is too bespoke or too proprietary, because it means that they're beholden to their ability to maintain value in the world is contingent on that thing remaining available. And so there's also a big aspect of like, if this is hyper fragile in terms of the capabilities, and it also obscures like who is benefiting from it every time you kind of build with it or learn how to promote with it. And yeah, I think that if we had slightly more transparent sort of practices of being able to kind of attribute in terms of what goes into it, but also have a little bit more capability to be able to talk about or to identify just how thin somebody's ability is going to be to practice this kind of stuff. Like if somebody hits their Sora or ChatGPT or whatever rate limit, then they're useless in a way that simply doesn't happen if you know how to use DaVinci Resolve or other things like that. So yeah, and if you know how to use DaVinci Resolve, you don't know exactly how to use Premiere or After Effects, but chances are the sort of the distance is lower there. So all sort of modern 21st century, 20th century skill is kind of contingent in that sense, but just the sheer degree of that and the way in which it's sort of intentionally obscured, I think is a significant issue in this moment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brandel. Andrew?
I was just gonna say the video is lovely and beautiful stuff. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
I was kind of reminded of when I first saw a Matthew Barney film, like Cremaster, and that made me wonder, like, what would Matthew Barney do with this technology now, right? Because he was like AI, well, just blew my mind. I don't know how familiar anybody is with the Cremaster series, but can't recommend it enough.
What's it called?
Cremaster. So Matthew Barney is a San Francisco artist, but
Okay.
he was like married to Bjork for a while and did some really trippy shit. I mean, the Cremaster films just will blow your mind, but
oh, great.
Yeah. You'll never be the same.
I'll try. I'm definitely going to watch that. Sebastian?
Again, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.
Hi. Just kind of wanted to mention some stuff that annoys me about AI.
Great.
And I think it's got to do with the way that we do everything, right? Like we have this capitalism worm in our brains that makes us see the world a certain way. And it's all about extraction. And just like a little bit of context, I have a non-for-profit organization in Mexico that helps street dogs and cats, and it's run by my mom. So when she uses AI to create like a picture of a dog to try to like put out a message, like I kind of get it, and it looks kind of crappy, and the dog looks kind of dead, and right, it doesn't work. But we're working with an ad agency in Mexico, and they're doing some work for us, and then they also use it. And it just seems like so lazy, so crappy, hype, right? Just like feeding into it, trying to be like, oh yeah, this is gonna sell because it's AI and AI is trending, so like we should do this. But it looks so bad, and they have the tools to create like great ads. They can get photographers to get, pictures of the actual dogs we're helping, not some like, plastic looking fuzzy, I don't know. There was like a period of time, I guess, like in around like 2008, where there was a bunch of renderings on Pinterest, and people would be like, "Oh, Sebastian, you're a designer. Like, what do you think about this? Or do you like this?" And it was always like, "Oh, that's a rendering. Oh, that's a surface over there. Like, oh, like that's not real." And I feel like that's what's happening with AI. Like, it's really easy to be like, "Oh yeah, that's the same thing." So you flood the like social media with all this stuff, and I'm bored of AI. Like I don't like seeing it. And I feel like this is also like a good thing because it means that as designers and artists, we have the power to create this stuff that's not AI. And it makes it maybe more valuable or more like handmade.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Sebastian. I have to, this will be the last one for me. I have to go on to another meeting. I do rule.
Hey, thanks for your presentation.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Sorry, how do you say your name? I thought that was.
You say my name, Sandro. That's how you say my name.
Sandro. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a symposium on not presenting, but watching a bunch of people talk about AI, and these are pretty serious people run by a serious company. And so I joined, and it was 2 hours long, and it was 5 speakers. And the MC started the conversation by saying the following kind of therapy to the people listening, that everyone here, this verbatim, everyone here, what you do is important. You are important. It was a shocking kind of consolation to unanticipated, shell-shocked crowd, right? Afraid that what they do is being removed. These are engineers, designers, and so on. This was the audience. Okay, so we start this thing with this kind of in mind, and then every single demo of AI went wrong completely, terribly. And these are really, really skilled people that I highly respect and follow and even converse with. Um, Hallucinations in the middle of like production, that buy my product is the intro, and then here's my product in action, and it sucks, right? And kind of agentic engineer who says, "Oh, I'm making so much money, and I build things in a couple of hours, and I just let it run, and then I wake up in the morning and it's done. It costs me some, a few $100s, but it's there." And then he's trying to do the simplest thing, and it won't even start. It just decides to use a model that he did not ask for. It goes off on a tangent that he had to stop because it was actually a dangerous tangent. And one of the other speakers showed a quote from Databricks, which is a kind of large data management company, and they have AIs, like all of them do, like Snowflake and everybody, and to help you essentially manage your data with AI, which has a lot of benefits, showing a screenshot of a suggestion by the AI to run the command delete if exists in SQL, which is, and some people in the room would know, means delete your entire database. So they didn't press the run command button, right? Because they knew what they were doing, right? But if you didn't know what you were doing, you would press the run command, and then you'd wonder why the screen is blank and all your data is gone. And so I just wanted to lay that out. That's reportage. I tried to be non-subjective. We started thinking that everyone in this room would feel that they're being imposed upon and that their future is bleak. And then we saw this future that's apparently coming, and it's got 3 heads, right? Like it doesn't know what it is. So I'm a huge, I need to say, I'm a huge AI proponent. I build software for using AI, and there's an enormous amount of benefits, but it's a little early to be freaking out. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, here. All right, I gotta go on to my next meeting. It was a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for all these thoughts. What an amazing room, and thank you for inviting me, Julian.
Yeah, of course. Good seeing you, Kirby, and
all right.
we'll be in touch. Take care.
Thanks, brother. All right, have an awesome Friday, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. What makes me angry about people who get angry is that they get angry. I get it, but it's also, I think my frustration and to that point comes the thing of like, and just like let it be, just like sit and listen and watch, and I think it's the immediate kinetic reaction that I think the frustration is that people are not in touch with themselves enough. I mean, they can probably theorize why they're frustrated. They'll run through the list that has been given to them, which is like energy usage, you're taking away jobs from artists, all that kind of stuff. And then the reaction comes like a histamine reaction. They start sneezing. They can't help themselves. And so I just wonder, I wish there was a way in which you could say like, look, I get it. But something new is happening. And I also, I'm not ignorant of the challenges. And I think about it every time, like when I run the render station, I've got a underinterrupted power supply thing, because Venice Beach power here is weird. It rains and it goes out, but it's like, and so I'll show you how many watts it's running. So I'll be doing a render and I'll just kind of like look down. I was like 600 fucking watts, man. That's crazy. It's crazy. 600-watt light bulbs. I don't even think you can buy nowadays because they're just like, no, just use the LED ones. So you're aware of it, and
I think that's a quick product you could build, Julian. I think everybody needs to monitor their AI wattage. sell it for $5 in Walmart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There was that was a thing I remember back in the day. I remember actually, who was it? Mateos, you were asking about Tokyo. If you go to Tokyo Hands, is the name of the shop. It's like 10 stories, just the most wackiest store you've ever been in. And I went there, and one of the things I got was, like a plug that you plug a plug into, and it shows you how much energy. I think there was a vibe at the time.
Yeah,
This was
exactly.
about
Awesome.
10, 12, 15 years ago, maybe something like that, where it was like, I don't know. It felt, I think there's a little bit of like Japan being more energy conscious than the US. I might have been making that up, but the fact that you could find one of these things, and I probably still have it in the back. Yeah.
I got a thing called a kilowatt.
Oh, Dre.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, man.
I got.
No, I knew you were. It's just like I was like waiting for you to. I was waiting for your reflections. I was, what Trey gonna say?
Oh, dude, I was practicing so much fucking restraint. There's a lot to say, and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna say anything. But just speaking of power capture, there's a thing called a kilowatt. You can just buy it on Amazon, little block that you stick into the wall, and you stick anything into that wall, into that little block, and it'll give you real-time rating of the kilowatt usage that you're using. So it's great if you want to monitor stuff. And then NVIDIA has a power capture analysis tool. It's a terminal application that you can install, and you can see how much power you're using. And yeah, there's lots of power being used by AI, and it's because it's using GPUs. But guess what? There's a lot of power being used by video games that also use those same GPUs to
There you
do
go.
stuff.
That's the comeback. Stop playing your Call of Duty.
Well, I mean, there are a lot more gamers out there than there are AI people, but but still AI is a massive issue there. But it depends also where you're getting your power from, right? Like I live in Canada, and we have hydroelectric power, so we have sustainable, renewable power. Like it's just as long as Niagara Falls keeps flowing, we're not like we can just use the power, just go nuts. It's there for us to use. The turbines will keep spinning. That's not the case everywhere, but yeah, I think it's some interesting conversation going on in there. But like there the video was interesting, but it felt like it was all like there was definitely some jank going on in there. But like as somebody who works in the world of like, I have to make stuff where it can't look janky and it needs to look professional. It takes a lot of work. It's hard. Like AI is not like a push button solution. You can push a button and make it do things, but if you want to do something that looks really, really good, you're not taking a job away from somebody else. You're giving a job to somebody else who's using a different tool. Is all that's really going on. So that's one way to do it. And also just the jank. I'm working with a team at Adult Swim right now, and they want the jank. And it's hard to make the jank without going back in time and saying, we have to uninstall the current models and install like the early models that gave us the jank. And when they were doing stuff in Midjourney, I just told them, get out of Midjourney version 6 or version 7 and go roll back to Midjourney version 4 and put those prompts in there. So the tools are getting better to the point where like the jank is starting to be hard to create through just default means. But anyways, that's my take on the situation. Also, the one thing I did take offense to in that video was this idea of like artists need to make art and we can't, otherwise we're going to be letting art being created by engineers. And it's like, what are we doing? Are we gatekeeping self-expression from the talentless now? Like, no, let's have more engineers make art. Let's do that. Let's have more people make art and self-express and do that. I think it's so good. I mean, the art world is a fucking disaster right now, but not all artists are good artists. So why not let other people play that game too?
Why is everybody harsh on the engineers?
I know. Well, because they make life hard for us sometimes with their.
But why don't people recognize that engineers are artists? Like they're incredible poets,
Nice. Yeah. Have you ever looked at nicely coded stuff?
There used to be a Perl poetry competition. It was either Perl or Python.
I prefer Perl. I think Perl is just that's just throwing it back.
Plus, have you seen the inside of
CGI
a turbine? Turbine is a work of art. back to your
What's
hydroelectric.
turbine? What is that? Oh, what are you talking? Turbine? Is that a programming language or is that actually a device?
No, physical
That's a-
device. Back to that. Back to the hydroelectric. If you go and look at those turbine blades and how they're involutes and all the rest of it, beautiful.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm biting my tongue in response to what Dre said, but I'm thinking like a more, maybe more fruitful way to discuss this would be to like narrow down the discussion only to let's discuss the aesthetics. Let's discuss how this places within art context, media context, social media context, whatever. Just do that, because these discussions often go back to like AI, yay, nay, right? And then there are so many yay and nays that we speak past each other quite often. I mean, I'd love to discuss just the aesthetics of the jankiness or the crap or the accessibility or democratizing creativity or whatever. That would be fun, but I think the discussion would be more. I would love to have a discussion which was more focused, because it feels like we often end up here. And engineers as artists, no. I mean, I'd love to have that discussion, but and yeah, that was my 2.5 cents.
As an engineer, I don't object to the besmirching of engineers' names within the context of the aesthetics they have the ability to deliver. I feel like that's very substantially deserved amongst almost all of the engineers that I meet and work with on a daily basis. No disrespect, they know. So on the subject of aesthetics, so slightly long walk. I'm reading just found a really neat paper from the 1970s called the Retinex theory of color vision. And it's about the fact, like, if you look at color cones, this is from a color theorist person who worked at like Kodak or whatever. The are Most of the time people say, like, your green cone stimulates green light, is stimulated by green light, your red cone is stimulated by red light or whatever. That's not true. Like, there's like 95% overlap between all of those things in terms of how much they're stimulated. So it's always differentially stimulated. People invented a new color recently because they were able to shine light just on green cones or just on blue cones in order to fuck up the visual system in a way that's super exciting, very expensive, but if it gets cheaper, I will definitely, get in line to be able to see it. But the point of this Retinex theory of color vision paper is that, like, it's not the stimulus, it's not the proximal stimulus, it's the differential sort of aspect of it. It's what happens as a consequence of seeing in this way. And so in a context where you're constructing a proximal aesthetic, just like changing somebody's skin from beige or mid brown or dark brown to blue per se has much less of an effect over time. If something is pure aesthetic, if there aren't consequences and to the dynamics of the aesthetic, then it essentially disappears. So the fact that the speaker in that video had blue skin was cool, but or green skin or whatever, but long term it flattens itself out and ceases to be a differentiator. It ceases to be something that has significance. Because all it is as a palette swap. We can do that with computers, and we mostly decide not to. And so that's one of the things where, like, if you're talking about pure aesthetics and you're not willing to sort of ride out or think about the way in which aesthetics have consequences, then you don't get very far. Like, yeah. So I think that when you have the ability to construct something out of sort of the idea of a pure aesthetic without having something being like, oh, by the way, like, if you have a orchestral conductor who weighs that much, then the stage is going to collapse on them. Like, that would be a cool video, but AI is not going to help you with it.
I was just kind of thinking about engineers and AI, and it got me thinking about the Industrial Revolution and kind of like mass producing things. And I was wondering if things had played out differently, right? Like if if the new world hadn't like oppressed and polluted and made people miserable and not afford, not able to afford to live, would they have still thrown shoes into the machines to stop them and like sabotage them? And it kind of feels the same way with AI, right? Like it's not that it's good or bad, or it's how we use it. And when you live in a world that has these kind of disparities or right, like it just goes back to who's profiting from it, right? And if the tool is going to oppress or is it going to liberate, rather than if it's going to stay or not, kind of thing.
That's intriguing. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and so I don't know if you've been watching the news. I've been waiting for people to figure out how to throw the rocks in the turbines of of Elon Musk's Colossus that's being built on top of a pretty important aquifer, but more importantly, why is solar power not deployed? They're using gas turbines to power this thing. Back to our conversation about kilowatt hours and what that means when you're burning gas without filters on it near people's homes. And did you select this site on purpose? Because there's also, back to like symbols and what people are trafficking in aesthetically or like socioculturally, aesthetically would be maybe something to throw out there. The neighborhood where they put it was a runaway slave enclave historically. So also thinking about the palimpsest and how that interacts with the aesthetics of anything we're generating from these large server fields, which seem to be all popping up right now in the southern United States in locations where the communities, white or black, are suffering quite a bit at the hands of these things. Is it impossible to throw the stone now? Is it impossible to throw your shoe in the machine now? Since we all also have a foot in the door, so to speak. That AI makes it possible to do all kinds of things. There are public schools right now that unfortunately, that's the way they're going to get educated because there are not enough teachers willing to be in the classroom with the students. So there are these really intriguing moments where we're needing this thing, but at the same time, is it undoing us? What is it undoing? And how is the aesthetic production hiding the undoing and the redoing and the underdoing underneath it?
I think it is a lot harder to throw shoes in the machine now. I don't know.
Yeah, we're very dependent on layers of the machine we can't see. And there's a
reach.
I did a job for Southern California Edison, helping them design a network operations center. And this was back in the 90s when they had just gotten large, 1040p was still a high resolution. And so they had integrated the GIS system to become client friendly. So they'd map the whole schematic, which was formerly just a diagram, into a GIS so that they could see the network as a geography. And this was breaking the ability to see it as a schematic because now they had to zoom out to the whole continent and they couldn't draw the wires. And so the like loss of function and the number of layers that they had layer caked up and up and up. If you threw a shoe into that, you're going to take out the seaboard. We can't break those structures anymore because we're highly dependent on them, but they're also like literally still just transformers on poles. They're just old legacy systems that have been layered and layered and layered up as to get this extractive paradigm of control operational. They put the GIS in so that they could have that relationship to each specific address in some fashion and prioritize on those levels. But it was completely fucking them up because they needed a schematic view. we ended up like creating a slide printer, a Polaroid slide printer that could print a high resolution status overlay to the projected area they were painting with video, just to answer the question. And but the way that we're building up and up these systems, it's, I think, you know, your conversation about the AI and energy is about the coal and the other energy resources in those areas, and the energy attitudes in those areas, and how they are not so regulated against, you know, putting generators in the back of the warehouse instead of doing it properly. Even though I just want to say something too, you know, pretty soon this power issue is gonna, not pretty soon, but there's a potential for this power solution to go away using reversible compute substrates. And those would slosh the electricity around in the chips and just pick off the calculations using heat, or, you know, generating heat when they pick off the specific information. So reversible compute is there's going to be a moment in physics and you know, where we don't have these high energy costs anymore. So think about that for a future.
All right. Should we wrap? Good one. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you guys.
This is still working, right? The side
Yeah,
project.
this is awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. So sign up, because sure you guys got things that you want, that you would love to activate a conversation around.
Yeah, I'll try to present sometime. I'll sign up.
Appreciate you guys. You raised my bar.
You should present next week, Steve. Keep putting this off. You gotta just do it. I mean,
I just gotta do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not like presenting your dissertation or something. It's just like, hey, look what I made this week.
Yeah, no, I know. I get it. I get it.
You only get 10 minutes. There's only so much you can share.
Yeah, that's my problem. Gotta figure out what to cram in 10 minutes. But no, thanks for the encouragement. Yep. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Cool. All right, you guys. Take care. Thanks.
Peace on earth.
Take care all.